The stars outside his ship's window were unusually calm. Daniel adjusted the controls of his small explorer craft as he drifted above Scifi 9, a planet rarely visited and mostly forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. Daniel wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero either. He was just an explorer. He liked quiet places, and Scifi 9 looked quiet from space. No signals, no large cities, just a strange energy reading from one sector. That was enough to make him land. But the moment his ship touched down on the surface, it was clear something wasn't right. The ground was cracked. Old towers stood half-fallen. Metallic structures, rusted and broken, stretched out across the red soil like the bones of a dead giant. Wind howled through empty halls. The place smelled of old fire and ash, like something had been destroyed long ago. Daniel stepped outside in his suit. The helmet adjusted to the air and confirmed it was breathable but dusty. He walked slowly through the ruins, his boots crunching the debris underfoot. This place was once alive, he whispered to himself. But now... He looked around. Strange markings covered the walls. Symbols, not human, curved like flowing rivers and stars. He scanned them with his visor, but they didn't match any known language in his database. Then he heard it. A sound. Very soft. A child crying. Daniel froze. In a place like this, long abandoned and cold, why would there be a child? He followed the sound. It was faint, carried by the wind, coming from a collapsed structure nearby. A large stone beam had crashed through part of a metal building, leaving a small gap just big enough to crawl through. He crouched low and shined his flashlight into the darkness. "Hello?" he called gently. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped. Then a voice, very soft, answered. Not in words, just a small, frightened whimper. Daniel carefully squeezed inside, moving past broken glass and pieces of wall. As he reached the center, his light fell upon a small figure curled up near a glowing piece of wreckage. It was a child, but not human. She had smooth, pale blue skin that shimmered slightly in the light. Her eyes were golden and large, glowing faintly, with fear. Her ears were pointed, shaped like a leaf, and her body was thin, wrapped in a torn dark cloth. She was shaking. Her knees were scraped and one arm looked bruised. Daniel's heart sank. "Hey," he said softly, removing his helmet so she could see his face. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't move, but she didn't run either. He slowly took off his backpack and opened a small pack of dried food. He broke off a soft piece and gently slid it across the floor toward her. She looked at the food, then at him. Her hand reached out, carefully, and picked it up. She sniffed it and took a small bite. Her golden eyes didn't leave his face. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. She didn't answer. He tried again. "My name is Daniel. I'm a human." The girl looked down and then pointed to her chest. She said something very softly. He couldn't understand the word. It was short. 2 syllables. Maybe a name? Mira, he guessed. She looked up at him and slowly nodded. Daniel smiled gently. "Nice to meet you, Mira." He pulled out a water bottle, poured a small amount into a clean lid, and placed it near her. She hesitated, then crawled forward and drank. Daniel noticed something as she moved. Around her neck was a chain, and on it hung a small glowing pendant. It was shaped like a star with 5 points, each point lined with unknown symbols. Even with no translator, Daniel knew this pendant was special. This child wasn't just anyone. He looked around. "How long have you been here?" he asked softly. No answer. Just her quiet breathing and the flickering light of the pendant. Daniel sighed. "I can't leave you here." He carefully picked her up. She didn't resist, just held tightly onto the front of his suit, her little arms trembling. She was light, like she hadn't eaten well in days. Back outside, the wind picked up. He hurried to his ship. Inside, the ship's AI asked him for a report. He simply said, "Emergency rescue. 1 survivor. Unknown species, possibly royal. The girl sat silently on the co-pilot seat. She looked out the window, her hand gripping the pendant. Daniel gave her more food and some clean water. She didn't speak, but her eyes began to lose that deep fear. Slowly, she relaxed. Later that night, after setting up her small sleeping area, Daniel recorded a log entry. This planet, it wasn't empty. Something terrible happened here. Buildings show signs of combat, plasma burns, fallen towers. But I found her. Mira. She's not just a survivor. She has a pendant that glows with power I don't understand. I have a bad feeling that someone's going to come looking for her. And soon. As the night passed, Daniel sat beside her as she slept. She had curled up like a kitten, close to the warmth of the ship's generator. Her small hand never left the pendant. Outside, far beyond the planet, deep scanners in a distant alien ship picked up a signal, a human ship. On Sarava 9, and the signal from the pendant, the royal signal of the Saravian Empire, had just come alive. Daniel opened his eyes to the soft hum of his ship's systems. The lights were dim, but enough to see the small figure sleeping peacefully near the power unit. Mira was still curled up, holding the glowing star-shaped pendant tightly in her hand. He stood up slowly, careful not to wake her. After last night, his thoughts were heavy. Who was this child? Where did she come from? What happened to this planet? Daniel walked to his ship's console. He had set a sensor sweep overnight. As he checked the logs, his eyes narrowed. Something had responded to Mira's pendant. It was faint, but the pendant had sent out a signal, a pulse, into deep space. His ship's scanner had picked it up and followed its trail. The signal was ancient, layered with encryption, but powerful. Whatever it was, someone, or something, might be listening. Daniel leaned back in his chair. If someone out there is still connected to this, they might be coming. Far across the stars, deep in the center of Saravian space, the royal flagship floated like a black moon. It was silent inside, cold, powerful, and full of warriors. Queen Virella stood on the command deck, her eyes scanning the galactic charts. It had been 5 years since she lost her daughter. 5 years of searching. Her people had declared Mira gone, a victim of the rebellion. Some even called her dead, but Virella never gave up. Then that morning, her ship's high-range scanner lit up, a royal signal. The pendant, alive. Where? She asked, voice sharp. The officer beside her answered, Sarava 9, Your Majesty. The signal lasted for 17 seconds. Then silence. Send every available scout. Prepare my personal vessel, she ordered. Her golden eyes burned with new hope. I will go myself. The crew stared. The queen never left her fortress, but this time, this was different. She turned to her guards. If she's alive, I will find her. Back on Sarava 9, Daniel spent the next day searching the ruins nearby. Mira followed him silently, her small hand gripping his sleeve. She didn't speak, but he could feel she was more comfortable now. He pointed to old signs on a broken wall. Do you know what this says? Mira looked. Her eyes moved across the symbols. She touched one of them. It lit up softly, just for a moment. Daniel stared. That's not normal. They explored deeper. Inside one of the halls they found a broken throne, a real throne, large, stone, carved with more of those curved symbols. Around it, shattered statues of warriors stood in silence. Some held swords, others held glowing stones. Mira walked up to the throne and sat. It looked natural, like she had been there before. Daniel's heart beat faster. She wasn't just a survivor. She was part of this place, maybe even the heir to it. That night, while Mira slept again, Daniel checked his comm system. It picked up something, a signal. Not just any signal. A ship, actually, Several ships, approaching fast. Unidentified vessels entering orbit, his system announced. Daniel stood up quickly. Who are they? The scanners tried to lock on. He saw symbols on one ship, curved, elegant, glowing slightly, the same language from the ruins. His eyes widened. They were here for Mira. He rushed to her and gently shook her awake. Mira, listen, to me. We're not alone anymore. She sat up, confused, still sleepy. There's a ship, maybe more, coming down. I think they know about you. She looked scared. He held her hand. Don't worry. I won't let anyone hurt you. The Saravian landing craft descended like a silent arrow. It touched down not far from Daniel's ship. The air around it hissed with energy. The door opened and armored soldiers stepped out. Their skin was pale blue like Mira's, but their eyes were colder, harder. At the front of them was Queen. Virella, she wore a silver and black gown, long and regal. Her face was sharp, proud, but her eyes carried pain. She walked forward, scanning the area. Then her breath stopped. There, standing outside a human ship, was a man, and in his arms. Her daughter. Mira, she whispered. Her legs gave way. She dropped to her knees, her hand covering her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Mira saw her. She hesitated, then slowly stepped forward, but she didn't run to her. She stayed beside, Daniel holding his hand. The Queen's guards raised their weapons, thinking the human was a threat, but Virella stood up, wiping her tears. No, she said. He protected her. Daniel stepped forward a little. I didn't know who she was. I just found her. She was alone. Virella looked at him with deep, searching eyes. And you helped her? He nodded. Yes. She's my daughter, the Queen said quietly. She was taken during a war, lost. Everyone thought she had died. But I never stopped hoping. Mira looked at her pendant, then at the Queen. Virella knelt down and opened her arms, but Mira stayed where she was. Daniel leaned down and whispered, She's your mother. Mira looked torn. Then she whispered something in her own language. The Queen gasped and cried harder. She remembers me. The guards looked shocked. One of them whispered, Is it really her? Virella stood and held out her hand. Come, home, child, please. Mira turned to Daniel. Her golden eyes were full of questions. He knelt. It's okay. She loves you, I know she does. But Mira shook her head. She pointed at him, then to herself. Then she walked back and held his arm again. The Queen watched in silence. I see, she said, voice breaking. You saved her. She feels safe with you. Daniel didn't know what to say. I don't want to take her from you, the Queen said gently. But she is my daughter. Daniel looked at Mira. What do you want? Mira didn't speak, but she held his hand tightly. The Queen stared at both of them, her daughter and the strange human who found her. Then she whispered, Come with us. Both of you. Daniel blinked. What? You protected her. You earned her trust. And now, you've earned mine. Please come with us, be her guardian, even in our world. Daniel looked at the stars above, then down at Mira. He had come here for silence, for peace. Instead, he had found a child, and a queen, and maybe a new purpose. He nodded, I'll come. The journey to the Saravian capital was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel sat beside Mira in the alien ship's royal chamber, which was much larger and more elegant than anything he had seen before. The walls shimmered with soft blue light, and strange symbols pulsed gently across the ceiling. The ship flew smoothly, almost like it was gliding on water instead of space. Mira sat close to him, her small hand resting on his arm. She didn't speak much. She never did. But her eyes always followed him, watching his every move, making sure he didn't leave her side. Across from them, Queen Virella sat on her throne-like chair. She had changed out of her royal armor, and now wore a deep blue robe. Her long silver, Hair was tied back neatly and her expression was calm but filled with worry. Daniel finally spoke. "She still doesn't talk much." "She hasn't spoken in years," Virella replied softly. "Not since she was taken. We feared the worst. But now, here she is." Daniel nodded. "She's still scared." "Yes," the Queen agreed. "But not of you." That sentence stayed in Daniel's mind. Why wasn't Mira afraid of him, a stranger, a human, but still unsure around her own people? The ship arrived at Saravia Prime, the capital world of the Saravian Empire. From orbit, the planet looked beautiful, swirling clouds over glowing oceans with tall shining towers rising from its surface. It looked alive and peaceful, the opposite of the ruined planet where Daniel had found Mira. As the ship landed, hundreds of soldiers stood in rows to welcome the Queen's return. But they didn't cheer. They stared in silence, shocked to see a human stepping out of the royal vessel with the Queen's lost daughter at his side. Some murmured in confusion, others frowned in suspicion. Daniel could feel it. He didn't belong here. But Mira held his hand tightly and he walked forward anyway. Queen Virella raised her hand to silence the crowd. "This human saved my daughter's life," she announced. "He found her when no one else could. He cared for her, protected her, and brought her back. And now, he is under my protection." Some of the High Council members looked uncomfortable. One of them, a tall male with cold eyes, stepped forward. "With all due respect, Your Majesty," he said, bowing. "He is a human, and humans are not welcome within our walls, especially not in royal matters." Virella's eyes narrowed. "Would you have preferred she stayed lost forever?" The man said nothing. The Queen looked at Daniel. "Come, there is something you must see." Inside the royal palace, Daniel was led to a private chamber filled with glowing displays and ancient relics. Mira sat nearby, playing quietly with a soft ball of light, a Saravian toy that responded to her emotions. Virella walked over to a round table and placed her hand on it. A hologram appeared, showing a war from 5 years ago. Ships exploded in the sky. Soldiers fought in burning cities. Among the chaos, a small escape pod launched from a falling vessel. That pod carried Mira, the Queen said. "We were attacked by rebels, traitors to the Empire. They knew the child was important, so I ordered her taken to safety. But something went wrong. The pod vanished. We searched for years. Nothing." Daniel watched silently. "I never gave up," she continued. "And then your ship entered our space, and the pendant, her royal pendant, sent out its signal. That's how we found her." He nodded. "I didn't know what the pendant was. I just followed the sound of a child crying." Virella looked at him with honest eyes, and that simple action saved a future. The peace didn't last long. That evening, as the palace prepared for a formal celebration to welcome Mira home, the High Council gathered behind closed doors. Some were happy the princess had returned. But others were angry. "How can we allow a human to be part of the royal circle?" one of them shouted. "He's not one of us." "Worse," another added, "he could be a spy, or a threat." A decision was made, without the Queen's knowledge. They would test the human, force him to prove his loyalty or make him leave. Next morning Daniel woke up to shouting. Outside his guest room, Saravian guards had surrounded the hallway. Mira was missing. He rushed outside, heart pounding. "Where is she?" One of the guards pointed to the training grounds. The High Council took her. They claimed she must be re-educated, taught the ways of the Empire again. Daniel didn't wait. He ran. At the training grounds, Mira was standing inside a large arena. She looked frightened. In front of her stood a tall, armored warrior, one of the Empire's elite. The High Council had ordered a combat test to see if she could still act like a true Saravian. Daniel jumped into the arena before the match began. Stop this, she's just a child. The warrior looked at him coldly. She is royal, she must prove herself. No, Daniel shouted. She doesn't have to fight to prove anything. The warrior stepped forward, towering over him. And, what have you proven, human? Daniel didn't back down. I didn't need to fight, I gave her food, water, safety, love, that was enough. The warrior raised his weapon, ready to attack, more as a test than a true threat. Suddenly Mira screamed, her pendant flashed brightly, and a pulse of energy shot outward, pushing the warrior backward with invisible force. The crowd gasped. The queen arrived just in time to see it. Mira, she cried. Mira ran to Daniel, hiding behind him. The queen stepped into the arena, her eyes full of fire. Who gave the order for this madness? The High Council remained silent. She turned to the warrior. And you dared raise a weapon in front of my child? He knelt, shamed. Virella looked at Daniel. You stood against them. For her. Again. Daniel breathed hard, his voice quiet. She's not a soldier. She's just a girl. The queen nodded. You have proven more than any of them. She turned to the crowd. This human, this man, will be named Mira's guardian. He will stay with her, protect her, and raise her in our world. The crowd murmured, some with approval, others with doubt. But no one dared argue. That night, the stars above Saravia Prime shined brighter. Mira sat with Daniel on a high balcony. The queen stood nearby, watching her daughter smile for the first time. I don't belong here, Daniel whispered. Virella replied, You do now. He looked down at Mira, who rested her head against his arm. Maybe she was right. The days after the arena event passed slowly. Inside the royal palace, things looked calm, but Daniel could feel the tension in the air. Some members of the Saravian Empire had accepted him, especially the young ones who admired Mira's strength. But the older leaders, the High Council, watched him with cold eyes. They smiled in front of the queen but whispered behind her back. Daniel knew the truth. They didn't want a human so close to their royal family. Mira didn't care. She followed Daniel everywhere. She started smiling more, even laughing sometimes. She still didn't speak much, but her actions said everything. She trusted him, loved him like a father. One morning, Daniel took her to the palace garden. The sky was a soft purple and the air smelled like sweet herbs. Birds with bright feathers flew between silver trees. Mira was chasing small glowing insects and giggling. Virella came and sat beside Daniel on the stone bench. She's happy, she said softly. Daniel nodded. She deserves to be. The queen looked down at her hands. I was afraid. Afraid she would not remember me, or worse, hate me for not finding her sooner. She doesn't hate you, Daniel said, but she's still healing. Virella looked at him with tired eyes. You've done more for her than I have. Daniel didn't know what to say. She needs someone she can lean on, someone close, the queen continued. But I don't know how to be that person anymore. She's your daughter, Daniel said. You still have time. The queen gave a sad smile. And what about you? Will you stay? He looked at Mira as she danced through the tall grass. I'll stay as long as she wants me to. That afternoon, an emergency call shook the palace. One of the outer Saravian colonies had been attacked, burned to the ground. The message came from a rebel faction that had once tried to destroy the royal family. The same group believed to be responsible for Mira's disappearance 5 years ago. Now they had returned, and they had one demand. Give us the child, or we take everything. Daniel stood in the council room, listening to the message play, on repeat. The council argued loudly. They know she's alive now, one said. They must have tracked the pendant signal, another replied. They will come for her, a third said. We must send her away. Queen Virella stood up. No one will touch her. Daniel spoke firmly. If they're coming, I'll protect her. The council turned to him with sharp eyes. You're not Saravian, one member snapped. You can't even fight like us. I don't need to be Saravian, Daniel said. I'm human, and humans protect their family. Mira stepped into the room holding her pendant. She looked around, clearly sensing the fear in the room. When she saw Daniel, she ran to him and held his leg tightly. The queen looked at the council. We will not hide her. We will defend her. Preparations began immediately. The palace's defenses were activated. Shields, weapons, and fleets were put on high alert. The queen sent scouts into deep space to track rebel ships. Meanwhile, Daniel stayed close to Mira. He helped her with training, not the kind with weapons, but the kind that built confidence. He taught her how to stand tall, how to breathe when afraid, and how to speak with her hands when words wouldn't come. One night, she drew something in her sketchpad, a picture of herself, Daniel, and the queen, standing under the stars, holding hands. Daniel looked at it and smiled. "Is this your family?" Mira nodded. Then she finally spoke. One soft word. "Yes." Daniel froze. The queen, who had walked in just then, gasped and covered her mouth. "Mira," she whispered. The girl looked up at her mother, then ran to her and hugged her. Queen Virella knelt down and held her tightly, tears filling her eyes. "She spoke," she whispered. She finally spoke. But peace doesn't last forever. The rebels arrived 3 days later. 5 warships surrounded Saravia Prime. They sent a single message: surrender the child, or we attack. The council panicked. They'll destroy everything. We can't fight them alone. Maybe we should give them what they want. Virella slammed her fist on the table. "No! My daughter is not a gift to be handed over." Daniel stood beside her. "Then we fight." A plan was made. The main fleet would face the enemy in space, but if any rebels landed, Daniel and the royal guards would protect Mira inside the palace. Daniel was given armor, lightweight, silver, and designed for fast movement. It felt strange, but he accepted it. Mira gave him a small charm made of crystal. She placed it in his hand. "For luck," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "Thank you." The sky burned as the battle began. From the palace balcony, Mira and Daniel watched as Saravian ships clashed with the rebels high above. The queen stood beside them, giving orders to her generals. Suddenly, a warning blared. Enemy landing craft approaching the palace. Daniel grabbed Mira and ran inside. The royal guards followed. Within minutes, a rebel ship crash-landed in the garden. Smoke rose and dark-armored soldiers stormed the halls. The guards fought back bravely. Daniel held Mira's hand as he led her through secret halls under the palace. He had memorized the map earlier, but just as they reached a safe room, a rebel soldier blocked the path. He raised his weapon. "Hand over the girl," he growled. Daniel stepped in front of her. "No!" The soldier fired. Daniel dove to the side, grabbing Mira and shielding her. The energy blast hit the wall. Then, out of nowhere, a pulse of blue light exploded from Mira's pendant. The soldier screamed and fell backward, unconscious. Daniel stared at Mira. Her eyes were glowing. The pendant protected her. She was stronger than anyone thought. Later, after the palace was secured and the rebels defeated, the queen stood in the throne room. Mira sat on her throne, calm and proud. Daniel stood beside her, armor dented but smiling. The council looked around, humbled. The queen spoke clearly. "You all feared she was weak, but today she protected herself. And this man, this human, fought beside her. Not for power, not for gold, but for love." She turned to Daniel. "You are her guardian, but more than that, you are her family." Daniel bowed. "And she is mine." The palace was quiet after the battle. The weight of what had happened hung in the air like a soft fog. Mira sat on her throne, holding the glowing pendant close. Around her, the council members whispered quietly, no longer with doubt, but with respect. Daniel stood beside the queen, watching the young girl with a proud smile. Queen Virella's eyes were tired but shining with hope. "Today," she said, "we have learned something new. Strength is not only in power or bloodlines, it is in love and loyalty, and in courage." She looked directly at Daniel. You came to our world as a stranger, yet you stayed when others would have left. You became more than a guardian. You became family." Daniel bowed his head humbly. "I only did what any human would do, protect those they care about." The Queen smiled softly. "Humans have a strength unlike any other." The days that followed were filled with change. Mira's bond with Daniel grew stronger every day. She began to speak more, slowly but surely. Her laughter filled the palace halls, and her golden eyes shone with happiness. Daniel helped her learn the ways of the Saravian world, the history, the language, and the customs. But he also taught her things no royal tutor could: kindness, patience, and the courage to be herself. One evening, Daniel took Mira to the palace garden. The stars twinkled above, and the soft light of glowing plants surrounded them. "Do you want to see something special?" Daniel asked. Mira nodded eagerly. He showed her a small device, a human invention, that projected images into the sky. With a few buttons, stars and planets appeared, spinning slowly. "This is Earth," Daniel said softly. Mira's eyes widened. "Your home?" "Yes," Daniel smiled. "A place full of people who believe in hope." She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Maybe one day I will see it." The Queen watched this from afar, a small smile on her lips. She had lost hope once, but now, with her daughter and the human by her side, she saw a future full of promise. One morning, she invited Daniel to her private chamber. "I want to thank you," she said simply, "for saving my daughter, for standing by her, and for showing me that even the smallest light can shine in the darkest places." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. Mira is strong, and you never gave up." The Queen reached out and took his hand. "Would you stay with us? Not just as a guardian, but as a part of our family?" Daniel looked at her, then at Mira playing nearby. "I would be honored," he said. Months passed. The Saravian Empire began to heal. Rebels who once fought against the Queen now sought peace. Trade routes reopened and new alliances formed, and, at the heart of it all, stood a small family: Daniel, Mira, and Queen Virella. Together they showed the galaxy that even the oldest wounds could be healed with kindness. One night, as Mira slept, Daniel sat beside her bed. He held her hand, the pendant, resting between their fingers. She smiled in her sleep. "Good night, Mira," he whispered. "Good night, Daniel," she murmured softly. The galaxy watched. A human had saved an alien princess. An alien queen had opened her heart to a stranger. And a bond was born. A bond that would change the stars forever. Because sometimes true power isn't about weapons or wars. It's about love.